I continue my presentation and my exegesis of the beginning of the preface and the introduction of Hegel's logic. And because I understand speculative logic in its broad outlines, I know that something becomes effective, actual, only when all the conditions which make it possible and therefore necessary are combined. And I know that as of now, the conditions for the understanding of what I have to say are not yet present. But I must nonetheless express what I understand, because I know that when the time comes, when the stars align, those who must understand and find this knowledge will understand and will be illuminated, and they will also understand that their entire intellectual and spiritual path has led them here at the precise moment when they will stumble upon this video, and they will receive the knowledge that they need at this proper moment. So I'm still in the preface. The fundamental one of the fundamental determinations of classical logic is the law of identity. A equals A. That's one of the basic tenets of Aristotelian logic. An object is equal to itself, but an A cannot be A and not A at the same time. A man cannot be a man and a woman at the same time. That's what transgender people, they are trying to transcend the rules of Aristotelian logic, and in this sense they are Hegelians, but they try to realize Hegelian logic within the sphere of sexuality or biology, which is kind of inversion of Hegel, but inverting Hegel is part of the logic of Hegel. So yeah, if we say a tree is a tree, God is God, a house is a house, that's the law of logical identity in the classical tradition. But then we say nothing if we say that A equals A, that an object is equal to itself. We do not say anything. We do not learn anything. We do not develop any kind of knowledge. In order for knowledge to be produced, there must be a difference within identity. Difference must be introduced within identity. And let me clarify by an example that if you stumble upon this video, you must be familiar with. When you say a conservative is a conservative in the context of the modern West, actually you mean a conservative is a Westerner, because a conservative in the modern West wants to preserve or to restore the values, which is still vague at this moment, the values of Western civilization. He believes that it is worth preserving. So a conservative is a Westerner means that in the movement of consciousness, those who separate themselves from the cosmopolitan, leftist, humanitarian mindset, which is dominant in the press and the media and the academia and the political system, those who distantiate themselves and differentiate themselves will be forced by logical necessity to become Westerners and to identify as Westerners. And to say a Westerner is a Westerner, we say nothing, because the truth is that a Westerner is a white man, a white person, but not just a white, but a white who carries within him the values of conservatism, the will to preserve, and also the values of Western civilization in law, economics, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, in art and culture of a Western type, the scientific endeavor, and so on and so forth. And it is the very movement that we see at work in reality, that people begin by distantiating themselves from the left. They identify as conservative, but it's not satisfying, so they identify as Westerners. And here there's a conflict, because can you be a Westerner if you are not white, or are only Westerners, white, and you have many books published to say, oh, we must defend Western civilization. But what the authors mean, but what they do not dare to say, and I don't blame them because it's part of the process of consciousness, what they mean when they say we must save Western civilization is that they mean we must save the white race. But because of the political climates, because of the social pressure, they do not dare speak what they mean. So yeah, but then if we say a white person is a white person, that's not true, because a white person at this moment in the logical process is the result of everything which was previously in the development of consciousness. So he's a conservative, a Westerner, and a white, it will be shown, is not only white, but he is European, because all whites are European. But what is the difference between a white and a European? The way we imagine it is that a white is those who, the descendants of those who left Europe, the Canadians, the Americans, the white in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and even South America for some. And we imagine that the whites are those who have lost their European culture, and they are an Anglo-Saxon, business-like, materialistic type of people. They have no culture. That's how the representation from the arrogant Europeans represent and imagine whites. And it is false, but there's a part of truth in the sense that the difference between white and European is not a difference of biology, because all Europeans are white, and only white are Europeans, but it's a difference of culture. A European is a white, a biological white, who has incorporated within himself aspects of European culture, a European state of mind, a European mentality, a European spirit in a way. And at this moment in the process of the development of consciousness, he also carries within him as moments, as Hegel says, and we will see what the moment is, the previous determination. So he is a conservative, he's a Westerner, he's white, namely he's aware of his racial identity, and he must become a European. He must add to this emptiness, he must add cultural aspects, but which are different from Western culture, because Europe contains within itself Western culture, but adds more determinations to it. There is the idea of freedom and the rule of law is preserved in the European tradition, but there are more cultural, more spiritual aspects added to it, a more wealthy set of knowledge. So yeah, and we find in the white colonies, the white countries outside of Europe, whites who have become or remembered or rediscovered their European roots, and they know a lot more about European culture, and they live more as European with a European mindset than many Europeans living in Europe, which, like I said, they live in Europe geographically, but they are not even white, because they are not even aware that they are white. They are just consumers and leftist cosmopolitans, and they have not yet undergone the process of change. And there are whites in the former white offshoots of Europe, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the United States, etc., who are European-minded and European and culturally European. But then again, also we continue with this law of identity. We say a European is a European. We have just shown that a European is not a European. It's a conservative, it's a Westerner, it's a white, and it must continue to progress. Difference must, because it's not satisfactory, and difference must, the negative, the path of the emptiness which produces movement, the logical consequence would be to say that a European is not just a European, he's a pagan, because the difference between a European and a pagan is that the European is the totality of what I have just explained with the cultural aspect of Europe, but a pagan is a European, so he contains within himself all the previous determinations. He has not suppressed them. He's still conservative in his outlook on life. He still values freedom and liberty. He may have abandoned the free market capitalist system, but he still values freedom and the rule of law and an idea of virtue and morality in the sphere of public life. But a pagan is a European who contains within himself the religious determination. So he's a pagan, which is a European who, with a sense of the truth and the value and the spiritual depth of his own religious tradition. And the difference between the real pagan and the leftist pagans is that the leftist pagan, they have not gone through all the steps which lead necessarily and logically to paganism. Leftist pagans who try to revive the old traditions of Europe in a folkloric way, they are not conservative, they are not Westerners, they are not conscious that they are white. Even if they are white, biologically they have no consciousness of being white, or if they do, they are ashamed. They are not European because they don't have the European culture. So yeah, and that's just to illustrate that, and I could add one more thing, that a pagan is not only a pagan because he must be true to his own concept and he must become a Hyperborean. And if you are watching this video, there is a likelihood that you have watched all my previous videos about Hyperborea, that's the historical path which leads to the knowledge of the Hyperboreans, the development of logic, the phenomenology of what I call the European mind. So if you want to be a Hyperborean, you must have gone through all the steps, and your own personal path in your own individual life will have led you there inexorably, and you will be, when the time comes, able to understand my words. And yeah, so a pagan must become a Hyperborean, and the reason why you are here watching this video, if you understand my words, is to so that I might help you free your mind by teaching you the logical necessity, the logical process, the speculative process at work in the entire development which has led you there. And if you understand that, you have already understood a lot about Hegel, and you will understand that the purpose of a Hyperborean is to become a Hegelian, and the story continues and goes on. But I will stop there for the Hyperboreans. It's just that Hegel says that ordinary logic is insufficient, is incapable of grasping religious truth, and only speculative logic, the logic which says that, for instance, among many other logical determinations, that A equals A is not a true expression because it says nothing, that in order to gather knowledge and truth, there must be difference within identity. And when you understand that, you understand many things. You understand the most nonsensical aspects of the modern West, which in the light of speculative logic are not nonsensical. They make perfect sense. And yeah. Hegel says that the logic, speculative logic, is the logos. It's what the Christian call the word of God. And I will develop that in a next video. But when the Hyperboreans understand this video, they will be spiritually awakened, and they will realize that we, as spirits, we are a spiritual community. And this is what the Christian call the invisible church. And Schelling or Hegel said reason and freedom will be our watchword and the point of our rally point. And we will be united spiritually through reason and freedom. And when it occurs, it will take many weeks, many months, I don't know, but it will happen at some moment. This spiritual birth of the pagan community will bring about the birth of the Christian Holy Spirit. So paganism will be turned into its opposite, and by understanding that, we will understand that paganism and Christianity were one since the beginning, and the truth of one has its truth in the other, and they are one, and that's the truth of Christianity, which is the religion which includes within itself all other religions. So that's a dialectical irony, and when you understand this video, you will understand dialectics.